Anyways, so technical difficulties abound. I'm the single most professional streamer that there is on Twitch, absolutely by far, without any question at all. But I wanted to do some Q&A stuff. And this is what I was saying when my microphone was muted. But it was on Patreon. We had a couple of suggestions here and there, people wanting to do a little bit of a Q&A thing. So I figured, oh, what the hell? Well, let's set it at a goal. We'll put a number in, and if that is reached, then great. And we are there, and that's wonderful. So I put out a couple of messages looking for some questions. And the best part about this is, so I organized the questions and everything. I've got my document in front of me, the people that tossed in words here and there. And the first question on the list is, could you explain your audio setup? When it works, it's fantastic. But I have had a couple of issues. I just recently replaced my motherboard, which is a bit of a problem. And every now and then when I boot the computer up, for whatever reason, the audio interface is not happy. So audio pipeline. I'll go through the hardware, and then I can talk a bit about the software too. This wonderful microphone here that I have to sit right in front of is a Shure SM7B. It is an excellent microphone. It's used in an awful lot of broadcasting, radio broadcasting. You'll see it in a lot of other videos and radio personalities. I think Joe Rogan uses the same thing. It was the microphone used on the Michael Jackson Thriller album. Like it's a classic quality thing. Quality microphone. It's really, really fantastic. Now, the problem with it is that it's a very quiet microphone. There's more than one problem with it, but that's the big thing, is that you need a lot of gain. You have to push this microphone a lot to get it to work. So in addition to this, I have a little device called the Cloud Lifter, which is it's just something that sits in line. See if I can get it on the camera here without hopefully pulling any cords out. This little guy right here, Cloud Lifter CL1, gives it an extra 20 decibels of gain. And then that's plugged into a mic mute. So if I have to sneeze or cough or clear my throat or anything like that, I press the button, no audio happens. It's wonderful. From there, it goes into a Roland quad capture, which is an audio interface. So the XLR from the microphone can be translated into USB for the computer. And the quad capture is a great little device as well. It's got 2 mic inputs, but you can also plug like a guitar cable into the same inputs as well, which is just fantastic because I've got the guitar, right? I wanted to be able to do everything with it. But it also does some compression and noise gating and things like that. And so as soon as I moved away from the little crappy mixing board that I was using, everything got so much better just right away. It was fantastic. And that's the hardware that I'm using. So I've got lots of cables, lots of cables running everywhere. What do I got for a webcam? A C930 Logitech webcam. That's kind of my hardware setup. A couple of studio monitor speakers and whatnot. Outside of that, everybody's buffering. That's no good. I hope that's not a big thing. You know what? Let me try and adjust that really quickly. I'm going to kill the stream and we'll come back up at 720. Okay, we're back again, I hope. Let me know if the audio is okay. This is, I didn't want to have people streaming or buffering too much. I was streaming 1080-60, so it is entirely possible that could have caused some issues if they're not giving me the wonderful transcoding option. So feel free to drop the quality if you can. Anyway, so that's my hardware. Shure SM7B into a Cloud Lifter, into a mic mute, into a Roland quad capture for all of the wonderful hardware needs. And then after that, I'm going into all of the Adobe Suite programs. So we're into Adobe Audition. Is the primary program for recording audio that I'm using. And I've got a couple of different presets of, here's how I want the audio to sound. I'm going to do my compression first. I'm going to do my normalize. I'm going to do some mastering and things along those lines. hopefully everything is going good for people. But that's basically what I'm using. I have a scissor mount for the microphone, so it can sit above my desk and I can move it wherever the hell I want, which is great. And the SM7B also has a pop filter on it. You get a couple of different variants of this. It's got a thick one and a thin one. So fantastic gear. I've had an awful lot of luck with the microphone, although I am debating looking at I think it's the Electrovoice RE20 is another one, which one of the other problems that I've got with the microphone is that you have to be right up on it. If you're off axis at all, the sound goes to shit. So the RE20 is supposed to be an awful lot better at that. Okay, so feel free as we're going through this to ask any questions in chat. I can always add to my list of things without any difficulty. But the next question, Django Bunbun on Discord asked, and this is, a lot of these are kind of expected sorts of questions, I would say, because it's the first time I've actually really done a Q&A that was a proper one, even though this one's special from a technical perspective. What got you into doing YouTube? I used to work for the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is the Canadian Federal Police, basically. And when I started working for them, I was working in pay and compensation. It's basically exactly as boring as you would expect it to be. It is, every 2 weeks is the same, because now you're going to go and you're going to process people's overtime, and you're going to process their maternity leaves, and new employees, you're going to start their pay up, and all of that kind of thing. Outside of that, I was just bored. I was bored to death. And so, like anybody else, you would listen to podcasts. You would listen to different folks doing various creative things, and really, really just trying to keep yourself entertained in some fashion to make it through the day. And I was still playing World of Warcraft at the time, so I was listening to World of Warcraft podcasts. The Instance was one that was very popular that I listened to for an awful long time. And the other one is a little podcast named Blue Please. And I got the idea and started to move in that direction after I watched Total Biscuit move. Blue Please was his podcast that was basically just him talking about World of Warcraft. That's it. That's all it was. And it was something that I listened to all the time because I was playing the game, and I wanted to consume more media about the game. So I quite literally can say that I got into YouTube because of Total Biscuit. It's a, I don't know if it's the best reason, but I always wanted to do something in the game industry. I worked at BioWare for a little while, and I just don't, I'm not an artist. I'm not a programmer. I have no marketable skills for the game industry, except maybe the business side, the production, that kind of angle. So I was out of options. I'd kind of resigned myself to this. Well, I'm going to be doing government work forever. So, all right, I guess that's it. And I watched him move and start doing content that was not just World of Warcraft stuff. It was very interesting, and I decided not all that long afterwards to give it a try. I had an old Shure SM58 microphone that I had liberated from a concert a while back. Totally different story, but I traded it to a guy working in the compensation office who was doing a lot of music. He gave me a condenser microphone, and I took that condenser microphone. It was just a cheapy junk sort of thing. I took that and I started making videos with it. It was a blast, and I was terrible in the beginning. I was absolute, oh my God. I go back and I look at some of those old videos, and it's just absolute cringe nonsense. But it was fun. It was fun at the time. That's what got me into it. Again, following Total Biscuit, watching his World of Warcraft Blue Please podcast. So Moving on. Arrow Knee. I'd like to hear you talk about Oculus exclusives. So we're going to get into the heavy stuff, I guess, now. VR is in a very weird place. You see, with the consoles, there is such a huge market, both on the Xbox side and on the PlayStation side. Now, PlayStation is trouncing Xbox right now, but the market is enormous. So you kind of have a critical mass on both sides, where if there's an exclusive title, those people are going to be talking it up. You're going to get articles written. You're going to get a lot of these sorts of things, and it's going to get an awful lot of shares. People talking to their friends, convincing their friends that, oh, you need to buy this console because it has, you know, PlayStation 4 has Bloodborne, or Xbox has whatever Xbox has. I don't like exclusives at all. I never have. I feel like fragmenting the game industry is bad in general for gamers, because why should I have to buy 3 different systems to play all of these different games? But it was also, or appears to also be bad specifically for Facebook, because Oculus is not doing very well. I mean, they hit the price cut first. Yes, HTC did follow up with one afterwards, but those exclusives didn't make them win. Yeah, and I suspect very strongly that it has mostly to do with the fact that the VR industry is very small, right? The market for these things is not huge. That's why the PlayStation VR did so well, is because a huge install base of people had the machine that they could buy the VR rig for. Not that many people have a machine capable of doing VR, you know, with the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift. So I think doing exclusives on any of those titles where the install base is going to be that low is a huge mistake. I don't think that it convinces people that they should buy an Oculus because of a game. You're dealing with the enthusiast crowd. They're going to buy whatever they're going to buy, and your one game is not going to sway them. I don't think, at least. So I think it was a huge mistake. But I understand why they do it. I mean, it's the same reason that all of the different game companies, hardware companies, try and do sort of exclusive deals, right? They all want to have that feather in the cap. Now, there is a benefit to it, and this happens in consoles as well. Not every exclusive is designed to sell a system. So, give you an example. If you're going to buy... Now, maybe not on the console exclusivity. Let's look at GameStop, right? A GameStop exclusive thing is not necessarily designed to make people go and buy the thing from GameStop. GameStop thinks it is. But as far as Xbox or PlayStation is concerned, they like the idea of that added little benefit rewarding the player. And the same thing is true with console exclusives. Right? You already own a PlayStation 4. So when a console exclusive comes out for the PlayStation 4, what it does is it reinforces your purchase decision to buy that console. Same thing with the Xbox, right? That's how this kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. Not every exclusive is going to be a system seller, but a constant flow of these little reminders that you made the right choice. Here's an extra. Here's a free game. Here's a cheap subscription, the PS Plus, PlayStation Plus. You get those free games. It's this constant reinforcement of you made the right decision. You bought the right console. The other guys are wrong because they don't have this awesome stuff. You get to have it. That's part of what the exclusivity thing is and what it does. So I could see some benefit on the Oculus side for that. But I don't think it was anywhere near enough to make them successful. VR is in a very, very rough spot right now. PlayStation VR, I believe, not counting like the Gear VR, the phone shenanigans that nobody ever uses for more than 10 minutes. PlayStation VR is doing reasonable. HTC was looking at selling their VR division, so it can't be doing that well. Now, then they sold their cell phone division instead to Google, but whatever. And Oculus hit the price drop early, and their price was already lower to begin with. So I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have to wait and see how VR turns out in the end. But I do think that for an emerging market, an exclusive title is a huge mistake from the developer side, because I mean your market is even lower, so you have to be getting a good chunk of money to do that exclusive and not give it to the other guy. But I don't think it was I don't think it was a good idea myself. I think it damaged the VR industry to try and lock down exclusives in that way. Let's get political. Sandstraber on YouTube. What do you think of the alt-right backlash from Wolfenstein 2? I think Wolfenstein 2 is an excellent example of the video game industry taking the piss out of serious topics. Wolfenstein The New Order was a fantastic title. I haven't played Wolfenstein 2 yet. But I mean, it's not like they're going to change the theme. It's going to be the same thing. It's the Nazis won and you have to deal with it, right? People getting upset about an existing intellectual property, which is what Wolfenstein is. I mean, go back to Wolfenstein 3D. It was you in a dungeon trying to escape and kill Nazis along the way. Right? That's what that's the premise of this story is, what if the Nazis won? That's the whole thing. So having some kind of massive backlash, this is a terrible thing. Well, okay. It's been a terrible thing for years. So does it really matter? I think at this stage, if somebody doesn't believe that Nazis are wrong, they weren't paying attention in school, regardless of whether you're in the United States or elsewhere. So that's my view on that. I think it's ridiculous. It's, you know what? Let me back up. The same thing happened to The Witcher. So the Witcher series had this big controversy about racism, that it was a terrible racist thing because all of the characters in it are white. Now, The Witcher is based on the Witcher stories, which were written by an author in Poland, which is mostly a white country. That's kind of how that sort of train of thought goes. It wasn't written to be a race issue. It wasn't written for inclusion or anything along those lines. It doesn't have to be. Not everything has to include everyone, right? And so they got blasted for being, making this racist game, when really all they did was they picked somebody else's story and said, we want to make a game about your story, so we're going to try and be faithful to your story, right? If you do it the other way, then you have all kinds of other people being upset. This is what Peter Jackson had as a problem, right? He vastly expanded the role of Arwen in the Lord of the Rings trilogy because she didn't do a lot of those things, right? But he did it because in Tolkien's world, there are not a lot of strong female characters. There's a few, but they're pretty sparse in the whole story. So Jackson knew that if he put out, and I'm still grumpy at him because I'm a bit of a purist where it comes to Lord of the Rings, but he knew that if he put out a movie that was purely based on the story, that there would be a subset of the audience that would be very turned off by it because they want to feel like they're a part of the story. So I don't think, if you're going to pick an existing mythos, I think you need to be given something of a free pass on the creative license side of things. I don't think that there's a need to make everything inclusive for everyone. There are lots of opportunities to do that, and picking an existing game franchise that has been this way since its very beginning, like 30 years ago, close to, I don't remember when Wolfenstein 3D came out. Maybe it was 25, something like that. Anyways, it's not a new game. It's been around forever. So getting grumpy at it now is kind of a waste of time. Oh, Gabe Lincoln on Discord. What is, in your opinion, the best game of all time? And can you give a reason as to why you like it so much? I have two. And no. So the best game of all time is completely and totally and in every conceivable possible way a subjective thing. My best game of all time, and there are two of them, and they're matched equally for me, is Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger. These two games, at the time that they were released, were the greatest things that I had ever played. If you look back to games before that, you're playing on the Nintendo Entertainment System, playing the original Final Fantasy, which was, it was a long game and whatnot. Simon's Quest, Super Contra, a lot of those sorts of things. They were good, but there wasn't really much of a story there. There wasn't really much of a plot. Final Fantasy VI was one of the first games where I must have played it. I must have finished that game 30 or 40 times. Genuinely, like that's how many times I've played through this. Chrono Trigger, not as many times, but you got to keep in mind back then, I was doing an awful lot of renting of games. I didn't own either of them. We would go down to the rental store and rent them for 7 days because I wanted to play it, wanted to play it again. It was so good. Those are my two. But giving a reason for why that's so difficult, giving a reason for why that should be the greatest game of all time. I don't know. It's so hard to describe why that matters, because if I look back and compare those games to what we have now, the difference is quite remarkable, right? The Witcher 3 is, in my view, as good a story as Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger in a lot of ways. Like there's as much going on, and it looks so much better, and it sounds so much better. So why would I not look at The Witcher 3 as being a better game? But I don't. So it's God damn it, it's hard to try and analyze why that matters. And I'm sure that an awful lot of it comes down to the rose-colored glasses. It's nostalgia, right? I mean, playing The Witcher 3, I had to balance that with work, right? I couldn't just play all the time or anything like that. Final Fantasy VI, man, there were days where I played it like all day, 3 days in a row. We're talking 12, 14, 16-hour days. This happened. This was when I was a kid. This was the way that I would play games. I would play in these massive chunks of time. So I can't really say this is why I think it's actually the best game of all time. And to be fair, I don't know that it matters, right? There are a lot of amazing games that nowadays are, not really all that impressive. But at the time, Mario 64 is another great example of a game that at the time was the just mind-blowing. Everything about it was mind-blowing. But now, we've seen it. It's been around. We've moved on. There are different mechanics that are better executed. Not everything, but some things. So it's a little bit tricky. I should probably give the sort of corollary example or reverse example. Gabe didn't ask, but what's the worst game of all time? Mechanically, Bad Rats was pretty bad. Big Rigs was pretty bad. I'd have to give it to one of those two. Those are awful. I mean, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, though, then you can end up with Digital Homicide and Zonatron and all of those asset flip nonsense, which is not even a game at that point. But things that appeared to genuinely be a game somebody thought was okay to release. Yeah, Big Rigs, Bad Rats, stuff like that for sure. Okay, let's grab one from chat. I'm in the process of designing my workspace. What do you like about your setup? So at the beginning, and I've got to edit this together because we had a big, technical issue in the middle, but the biggest thing about doing YouTube videos is you need to have your own place to go. I'm in the basement, and I've got doors that block off the furnace. So if the furnace comes on, or if somebody's doing laundry or anything like that, that I can kind of close that and get most of the audio out. Having a place to go where you can just do your own thing is one of the most important pieces. If you've already got that, then the rest of it is quality of life. So you need to have a good microphone, but you also need to learn how to use the microphone. I think that a scissor arm stand is absolutely fantastic because you can stick it wherever you want, right? Move it all over the place. It doesn't matter. That's one of the biggest quality of life things, I think. I used to use a mic stand where I would have it sitting beside me and then I could swing it over. And that was bad because you bump it and all of that kind of stuff. It causes problems. So definitely a scissor arm if you can, preferably raised up above. But other than that, I mean, you need a place to go. That's really the most important thing about having a workspace to do videos and do any of this kind of gaming stuff. Preferably a clean place, but can't always have everything that you want. Okay. Draco Ranger asks lots of questions all the time, so I'm going to have to answer a couple of those. Are there any are there any good publishers? And then alternatively, what are the least evil publishers? Which I think technically, to me, that's kind of the same thing, but I don't know. I like Devolver. I think that Devolver has the right way of going about this. They make fun of a lot of the things that the game industry is doing. They sell you a full product. They don't try and nickel and dime the little things. There's a little bit too much bullshit there. You know, their E3 thing, I did not find it nearly as funny as everybody else did. But that was mostly because I had scheduled time to try and cover it. And so I would say that they're probably, if I was to pick a publisher, they're the ones that seem to be the most genuine. You know, they're picking games based on the game being fun, not necessarily, you know, the game doesn't necessarily have to look like the most advanced game out there. But it has to be fun. And that seems to be their biggest criteria. If you play any Devolver Digital game, it's like that was the only reason they chose it. It could look like absolute trash, and if it's fun, they'll publish it, and that's awesome. I think that's a really good way of handling it for criteria. Now, that said, one of my ways that I think we can probably solve some of this microtransaction stuff, right? Making games more expensive and then going down the road of microtransactions, that is a solution. That will even out that whole boom and bust kind of thing. But so will reducing the budget, right? If you're going to spend, I don't know, let's pick a number, $500 million on video games, right? Well, if you're going to spend as much on marketing as you are on the game, then that means that you can make 5 games in a year at $50 million a piece. Right? 50 million for development, 50 million for marketing. You've got 5 of those in $500 million. Or just bear with me here. You make $10 million games with $10 million budgets, and you make a whole bunch of them. You've got 25 games now in the year that you can make with $500 million. This sounds fantastic to me. And it's also going to spread that risk out, right? If one of those games fails horribly, because this happens, you barely notice it, right? In comparison to all of the other things that you're doing. So I think the game industry is getting themselves into a bit of a problem there. So what I would like to see, and why I bring this up when I'm talking about Devolver, is that Devolver could be the publisher for the next Hellblade. Right? Hellblade was a game that I like to use it as an example because it looks like a AAA game. It sounds like it. The face animations and all of this stuff is so good, but it was operating on a much smaller budget. So if Devolver said, okay, let's go find ourselves some of these mid-tier games, rather than just the pixel art indie stuff. Find a couple of them and just see how they do. I think that there's a lot of room in the market for that, because nobody's targeting it, right? The big publishers have no interest in something with a budget that small. They're not after it. It doesn't excite them to be able to say, we sold 60 million copies or whatever stupid number they happen to go through. So anyways, I would say that Devolver is a good publisher. CD Projekt Red is kind of yes and no, because they're their own publisher. I don't know how much they do for other things, so that's why I don't really bring them up here. As far as the least evil, if you were to say, here are all of the evil publishers and the least of the evil ones, God, I don't know. They're all getting pretty bad. Like they really are. They're all going down these different roads. Because gamers have told them, yeah, this is totally okay. So I mean, you do get, no, you know what? No, I can't even give any props to Ubisoft. You know what? I'm just gonna back out of that one. They're all bad in some way or another, and it's because they're all public companies. They have to. That's their job. If they don't do that, they will get fired. Right? That's how the board of directors thing works, and CEO and all that kind of stuff. The shareholders can fire them. So of course they're going to do whatever the shareholders want, right? That's their primary purpose. Their primary purpose is not to make great games. That's the developers. That's not the publisher. Okay. I think there was something else here. Miko Selva, the Gnome theme. I'm going to get to that one. We'll do that one last. Erratic. You think that strategy and management type games will continue to rise in popularity? And to what, if anything, do you attribute the increase in variety of said games these days? Okay, so two things. The digital distribution has changed everything. And some of those games take an awful long time to develop. So a lot of the games that are coming out now would have been started in 2013, 2014 kind of times. It's the same reason why a small indie artist in the music industry can do really, really well. Because there is a market there, but the problem is that the market is both underserved, but not underserved enough that it makes a large publisher or large developer look at it and say, hey, we want to take a chunk out of this. So there has always been an amazing core market of strategy, whether it's real-time strategy or turn-based, 4X and some of that kind of stuff, like the grand strategy stuff, management games like football management, that kind of thing. There has always been a really, really strong core group of those players. It's kind of like the farming simulator, Euro Truck Simulator, that kind of thing. There's a very enthusiastic group of people that love those games. So all you need to do is create the game and they will buy it. But the problem that you run into is that you have to keep your budget at a certain level. So because the market is only so big. It's the same thing with indie games, honestly, right? Like these platformers that are out there, the 2D side-scrolling platformers, there's only so many people that want a lot of those. Right? Everybody buys Super Meat Boy because it's ridiculously cheap and amazingly well done, and everybody knows it. It's a viral success. But there's only so many people that want those games all the time. So the reason why I think they can be something that is successful now is because the cost of providing that product to somebody has been brought down. You don't have to publish a bunch or have a publisher produce a whole bunch of box copies that are going to sit in a game store, right? That are Walmart's never even going to bother because they know that they're not going to sell in huge quantities. But you can do a digital store and you can send it that way, and it kind of deals with it. And that's what's changed a lot of the industry stuff, that people can make these different projects, and they don't have the massive investment in production in order to do it, right? So it's a lot of tech is like that now. It's pay as you use, right? The Amazon cloud, AWS, Azure, cloud services and things like that. You only pay for the services you actually use. So if you put a game up for sale and you want to sell it yourself or through Steam or whatever the case, you only pay them when somebody buys it and you give them a cut of the action, right? That's different than having to put up a whole bunch of money or getting a big investment from a publisher in the beginning, because that's what the publishers are for. Their job is to make the investment so that you can build the game and then everybody benefits when it sells a whole bunch. That's kind of how it works. It's the same way in the music industry, right? A music publisher is the same thing. They provide the front money to the artist. They set them up with a tour bus and get them out on tour and all of that kind of stuff in most cases. And then the artists make a small chunk of money on the music sales, and they make a whole bunch of money on the merch sales at concerts and things along those lines. So, okay, we're going to move on to another one. Mokona 512 on Discord. Why don't game review sites take off points for aspects of a game that will negatively impact the ability to use it? For example, internet-reliant DRM, or Activisions that rely on the company keeping a DRM server running, which can go away at any time when it is no longer profitable to run it. In review circles, there are predominantly what appear to be two different schools of thought. There are the group of people that believe that they are reviewing a game as a product, as a whole, everything that is encompassed within that product. And then there's a school of thought where the people want to review the game. They're interested in the game only. And that's kind of where the difference lies. And the people that are interested in the game only, they also tend to be the kinds of people that have absolutely no interest in a lot of those technical issues, right? They're the same people that they don't care about the DRM. It doesn't bother them because they always have an internet connection. They don't think they're ever going to go back and play the game later when it inevitably gets shut down. Like a lot of those kinds of things. They, de novo doesn't bother them because they don't think it's an issue. And whether you think those things are a big concern will determine which of those camps you're going to fall in, basically. And you'll see that kind of thing. And I mean, I don't think that it matters. I really don't. I think that gamers should get away from the review score thing, because people are reading the score and then just taking that and moving on. And that's the value there is just not of any use to anybody, right? You can get as much value out of a reviewer that you hate as you can get out of a reviewer that you absolutely love, right? I hate this person. They always rag on these games, and I think those games are awesome. Okay. You have all of the information you need. They looked at they did a review of this game, and they said that they hated it because of this reason, this reason, this reason. Well, they always say that, and I always love those games. So go buy the fucking game. It's obvious you're going to love it. What's the problem? Right? Let it go. It doesn't really matter. Right? All you need to know is some consistency of why and how that reviewer does their work. That's what's valuable. That's what has real use to the end buyer. Just going for a score doesn't do anything. But from what I understand, generally speaking, that's why some reviewers will focus and hit these games when they have a DRM that is problematic or could be problematic, and some that don't. It depends on which camp they're falling in. Are they the kind of people that believe it's my job to review the game, or it's my job to review the product as a whole? Myself personally, whenever I've done reviews, I do the whole product because I think that the whole package has value. I think that is very important, and not everybody does. And I hear that when I see comments on my own reviews, right? I get those messages from people. They say, well, how can you not recommend it because of this one thing? I don't care about that. Well, that's fine. It's not your review. So take the information and move on. let us find something in chat. Hypergrip wants a second one. His was the audio setup. Let me find it here. Gotta scroll back. We can see you own at least 2 guitars. Yes, I do. Oh, it's a gorgeous beast. My musical tastes are predominantly things that have strings in it. And if I had to nail down who was my favorite musician of all time, this is his guitar. It was Dimebag Darrell from Pantera. Absolutely, by far, in my opinion, the greatest guitarist of all time. Not necessarily the fastest, they were faster, but the greatest. Anyways, so Hyper was saying, any chance of a Rocksmith live stream someday, preferably involving alcoholic beverages? Absolutely, 100% no. I don't think that I'll ever play live on stream. I've been playing for a long time, but it's also been very intermittent over the last while. So I have a lot of skill that has been lost. And Rocksmith is not really a game. It's a teaching tool. And it's a great teaching tool. Don't get me wrong. It is fantastic for what it is. But I don't think it's entertaining. You would have to have practiced a long series of songs to actually kind of make it an entertaining. Otherwise, it would just be me honking away, trying to figure out songs and playing them over and over and over and over again to get better and better. I don't think so. Now, that said, never say never. I've had some consideration of doing some kind of music thing. Maybe we'll see. There's a couple of songs that are really great. Some things from StarCraft 2, one thing from League of Legends that was just fantastic. I don't know. I could see that. It would be kind of fun to just sort of throw it into the end of a live stream, but it takes an awful lot of work. Okay, moving on again. See if we can find another question. Ango Patango. That's a fantastic name. Why is it that indie devs who have raised concerns about refunds on Steam have not said anything about the Steam family sharing feature? I've never refunded a game, but I have definitely held off of buying a game because I can share it with a friend. Technically, I don't think you're supposed to be sharing it with a friend. It is the family sharing feature. Indie devs, okay. In any business, when you have an entrepreneur startup, right, a small business or some kind of creative enterprise, whether it's that or whether it's tech, whether it's any of those kinds of things, you will have the business people and you will have what is commonly known as the champion. Okay, so you think to Hello Games and No Man's Sky, right? They had their champion, who I have now Sean Murray. That's the guy's name. His job was to hype people up. Now, the problem is that the champion very rarely has any business knowledge. And usually they're the over-the-top personality type. Their job is to get people excited about it. The business people are there in the background saying, no, don't say that. No, don't say that. Okay, bring this down. Okay, yeah, no, that one's right. You can go ahead and go crazy. The business people sort of temper those things. Indie devs, in a lot of cases, when you have these 1 and 2 person shops, even 3, 5, these really small groups, they're usually just a bunch of friends. And they don't have somebody that's there to temper them and say, you know what, don't go crazy on that. It's probably nothing. Let it go. It's fine. So the simple reason why they raised concerns about refunds on Steam and not the family sharing feature is because refunds on Steam was a big controversy. That was big news. It's just, I think it's that simple. It's because they heard about it and somebody wrote an email to that indie dev and said, can we interview you about this refund feature? We think it's going to be a big deal. If the media sites, Kotaku, Polygon, Eurogamer, all of them, if they don't send an email off to an indie dev asking about a particular thing, that indie dev has to be big enough and have a big enough audience that a tweet gets the game media's attention, right? So it's just an exposure thing, I think, more than anything else. I don't think that it would make much of a difference otherwise. Yeah, a drunk stream. That would be absolutely fantastic. I'm sure of it. Great. Okay, I got to do another of Draco's, because Draco Ranger asks lots of questions all of the time. Aside from a complete collapse, and I love it, by the way, it's great. Keep asking questions. This is good stuff. Can you see a way, so aside from a complete collapse, can you see a way to make the mobile game industry for gamers? No. I think that the mobile game industry, no, okay, let me back that off. I think that the mobile industry itself is a total lost cause. A couple of reasons. So the first is that people don't use their phone, or don't use a single thing on their phone for a long period of time, like an extended period of time, generally speaking, right? The mobile phone is designed in such a way that you're going to pop on and you're going to check Reddit, and then you're going to pop out of Reddit and you're going to go into Candy Crush and you're going to play your stupid little games until you run out of the free credits. And then once you've run out of the free credits and now you have to wait 4 hours to do it again, you're going to pop back out. You'll check Reddit again. Nothing new. So you're going to pop out, check your Twitter feed, check your Instagram, check your whatever, right? And then, well, okay, now I'm doing that. Maybe I'm actually playing a game. Maybe I'm sitting down and playing, you know, the Mario iOS or Pokemon Go or something. And then you get a Snapchat from somebody. And so you pop over and check that. Well, now that's interrupted the whole thing, right? So the whole design behind mobile is these little sort of micro uses of time, right? You pull your phone out when you're not doing something else. And then when you're doing something else, the phone goes away and you go and you deal with that. You're not sitting there for usually an hour playing a single game on your phone unless you're stuck on an airplane. So because of that, there aren't an awful lot of very engrossing experiences that come from a mobile phone. Like an individual thing that can take up a lot of, I shouldn't say that can take up, excuse me, a lot of time, because of course they very much do take up a lot of time, but there are a lot of these throwaway sorts of things that can be done very briefly for a very short period of time. And that's great. It has its own market. But I don't think that it's going to make, I don't think it's ever going to have a recovery until the next thing comes along to replace it. Then there'll be a chance. But no, I don't think that there's any way for the mobile game industry to be, you know, become a serious thing for gamers. And I mean, part of it was also the control scheme. That certainly affected it, right? Doing a touch interface really limits you on the kinds of games you can make and how in-depth you can make them. It makes it really difficult. So I don't know what the next one's going to look like. I don't know what the future of mobile is going to look like, but the stores are a mess. Now, I guess that said, there might be hope. You know, I could see maybe if somebody came out with a third-party curated store, where you have to pay to have your ad or your game reviewed, and it has to, you know, it has to maintain some kind of a quality standard. I could see that. I could see there being not, it wouldn't even be like the patient gamers thing, but just an older generation of people that are interested in, I want to play a thing on my phone because I am taking a lot of trips, or I want to play it on my tablet because I am taking a lot of trips, but I can't find it because it's in the middle of all of this crap, right? I can't get past all of the Clash of Clans clones in order to find the good game. So a curated store could be useful, I think, in mobile. But outside of that, no, man, it's a wasteland. It is absolutely a wasteland. Oy. So, back to chat. What is your opinion on Steam sales promoting collector culture among gamers? bloated libraries of games which people then never get to play. What would you recommend to people as reasonable or responsible, reasonable games consumerism? Um, uh, People are screwed. So I've made an awful lot of negative, nasty claims towards Valve in my time. A lot. I do it all the time. It's great. I love taking the piss out of them. It's great. Because they do a lot of nasty stuff, right? The marketplace, I think trading cards are awful the way that they're implemented. There's a lot of bad stuff going on there. The Steam sales, I don't have a problem with at all. I have no issue whatsoever with somebody buying a game and then never playing it. Because I feel like to start with, first off, you got a great deal, right? Now, I don't know. Because I can see where you're going with it. I understand. They are doing some negative stuff alongside it too, right? Trading cards, Steam account levels, all of that kind of stuff. But it has nothing to do with the sales at the end of the day. It's not the sale that's the problem. It's not people buying it because it's on sale that's the problem. It's the very small number of people that have bought into this. I must have a high Steam account level and I must collect all of these stupid trading cards, and I must. It's the other things and how they contribute to that that's a problem. You see, now I'll give you another example that's kind of similar. I believe that, and there was another question about this, and I'll get to that one right away here too. I believe that preserving games is extremely important. I believe that no game should be taken away from you by a developer or publisher without your consent in advance. I believe games are products. So I buy things on GOG, right? When I was a kid playing games with my mom, she was on the mouse. My two brothers are beside us. My dad's sitting nearby as well, or dad's controlling or I'm controlling or whatever, and mom's drawing a map, Return to Zork and all that other nonsense. We played a lot of games, right? All of the old Sierra games, King's Quest, Space Quest, Quest for Glory, all of that kind of stuff. And it was so much fun. So I buy all of these games and I buy them on GOG because they have them. Anybody want to guess how many of them I've played? Feel free. I bet your guess is wrong, but maybe not. The number of them that I've played is 1. I've probably bought 20 old games on GOG, and I've played 1 of them. See, I have a theory about retro gaming and games preservation and things like that. And it's one of those things that kind of bugs me a little bit, because I argue about it and I say games we need to have this. We need to have this ongoing ability to play these games, and DRM should never be able to take away my access to play that game. However, I think, and I don't have data to back this up, but I would dearly like to, and it's something that I'm constantly keeping an eye out for research. I think that the market for all of those old games is so small that it's not even worth worrying about. I think that the vast majority of people that are buying games on GOG.com never even download them. I would be willing... I should be really careful if I'm going to say this. Let's go with a low number. Let's go. I would be willing to bet $20. We'll keep it reasonable. If anybody can prove me wrong, you get $20. I'll figure out a way to get it to you. But I would be willing to bet that that's true. That the vast majority of people buy games on GOG.com and never even download them. Which means that the GOG ecosystem is entirely based on nostalgia. It's entirely based on, I need to have this because I had it when I was a kid, or I had it when I was younger. I played it back then and it was awesome, and I want to have it again. and they're never going to play it. Right. So that kind of leverages back into the same on the other question of Steam sales and collector culture and all of these sorts of things. And it's one of those things that kind of bugs me a little bit because I have very, very high standards where it comes to DRM, right? From a consumer standpoint, I think it's very important to try and fight these things and say, no, you don't get to take that away from me later, right? That's not okay. I bought this. This is mine now. I don't have to own the IP, but I can own the product. That's okay. But at the same time, if nobody's going to actually play it, what am I arguing for? You know, it's one of those things that's a little bit tricky. So, but that's my view. I strongly suspect that that GOG does not. People don't play. It's the same thing that happens with the Steam sales, right? People buy a ton of games, and then they have so many games that they never play. And I have this problem too. I mean, I have at this point so many games in Steam that I'm never going to play them all. It's just not going to happen. Right? It's never going to happen ever. So, I don't know. I'm dropping a lot of frames. So, I hope this is reasonably acceptable to watch. Please let me know if it's not. I'm seeing lots of questions and stuff like that. So, that's absolutely excellent. I really appreciate it. Why don't we toss a little mid, not a break per se, but you could drink a coffee and say, hey, if you haven't followed, please feel free to do so. I would love to see you around the next stream as well. And if you're here and have no idea who I am and why you're listening to me, I have a YouTube channel. I make videos. They're reasonably acceptable videos that seem to piss off a reasonably small number of people most of the time. So, it's worth checking out. youtube.com/thenGnomecast. Okay, let's find ourselves another question. Ryan, perhaps. Are you rocking early 2000s Oilers colors on the wall? Yes. However, it's not my doing. We're just renting. As a friend of ours that bought the house, and this was how it looked when we got here. There's a nice big painted Oilers thing in the garage, and it's just an absolute train wreck. So they had speakers up in the walls. There's holes around different places where they had speakers. So this would have been their Oilers den. Yeah, it's totally the old Oilers colors. And absolutely not. It's not a Starbucks sponsored stream. That would be great. I would gladly take their money to drink their coffee without paying for it. Okay, excuse me. Let us find another. Okay, let's go back. Yes, that's right. I was gonna deal with that one other. Clock on Discord. What do you think of console hacking? This kind of deals with sort of the DRM angle of things. What do you think of console hacking? Do you think it should be illegal since it can damage profits for OEMs like Sony or Nintendo? Or do you think that the benefits for the consumer outweigh the negative effects on the company since it allows people to run their other operating systems and homebrewed apps? I am really broken up about console hacking. And I'm really broken up about emulators as well, actually. So here's the thing. If you buy a thing, a physical object, I believe that you should be allowed to do whatever you want with that physical object. Whatever you want. Doesn't matter. If it's capable of doing it and you can make it do that, have at her. You should be absolutely allowed to do that. However, the primary purpose of console hacking and emulators is software piracy. I would be, and again, let's throw a bet out there. We'll throw another $20 on the line. right? Keep that keep that high roller thing going. Another $20 on the line. If anyone can prove that more than 5% of emulator usage or console hacking is legitimate, I would put the number that low. In fact, it might be lower than that. So it's really rough. I don't know. It's one of those things that I have to get behind. I have to say that you bought your console, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. By far, period, bar none. However, we also know exactly what you are going to do with it, which is pirate games. So I have to support it, but I can't support it at the same time. I don't know. It's really unfortunate. The other, I mean, if you want to take a look at it from a legal standpoint, I think it has to be legal. I think that's fair. But one thing that if you take a look into the law around emulators and ROMs, emulators, for example, right? You get your SNES emulator, PlayStation, whatever it is. The emulator is perfectly legal. And the emulator is perfectly legal to not only develop, but distribute. And then ROMs are legal sometimes, and in some locations, are legal if you rip the ROM yourself. It's a very important distinction. So if you have the technical know-how to rip the information from your cartridge and create a file that will work in this emulator, you have done nothing wrong. But that's not what happens. People are not, they're not using their Super Nintendo cartridge with some kind of third-party hardware. They're not using that cartridge, ripping their own ROM. They're just downloading the ROM from online. Right? That's where it makes that shift from this is legal to this is not. And it's a tough situation. I mean, emulators and ROMs are always going to be a tough situation. There are some good, there's some bad, but the fact of the matter is, I think, we're talking probably 95% plus use in console hacking and emulators is piracy. So no, I can't, for the most part, support it. But yes, I have to, because you bought the hardware, you should be able to do whatever the hell you want with it. I realize that's a non-answer. However, it's the only answer I've got. Okay, find ourselves something else here. Oh, there's Draco with more questions. Did you ever beat a Sierra adventure game without a walkthrough? Absolutely. All the time. Gotta remember, I'm a very old man. Very old. Terribly old. I'm like 3.5 decades plus a year. I'm ancient. When I played video games, back in my day, get off my lawn. Back in my day, there was no walkthrough. Sometimes there were guidebooks that you could buy. There was no internet. Not really. Right? We would play these. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. One of my favorite games of all time, top 10, is The Secret of Monkey Island. Absolutely. It was a fantastic game. And a lot of the reason for that is because we played it as a family. All 5 of us. Mom and dad, 2 brothers, and me. And we played that game and played that game and played that game. We got stuck for 3 months on one puzzle in Monkey Island. Spoiler alert, if you haven't played Monkey Island, well, there's nothing I can do about that now. But it's been long enough, you've had your opportunity. At some point in the game, there's a catacomb that you have to go through. And any direction you go, you're going to get lost. But on the Monkey Island itself, there's a group of cannibals. Okay, and the cannibals have a mysterious navigation device. It was called the Head of the Navigator, I believe. And you have to try and get it from them. We were stuck on this puzzle for 3 months. None of us could figure it out. We were clicking on things. We were giving things to things. It was the classic over-the-top moon logic. And it wasn't until randomly, 3 months later, somebody actually does a look at description of an item. Because you could look at the different items and it would give you, Guybrush Threepwood would give you this little blurb about what the item was. And there was a leaflet in the game. The title of the leaflet was How to Get Ahead in Navigating. Yes, you heard that correctly. So you give the leaflet to the cannibals that says How to Get Ahead in Navigating. They get all excited because they think they can go get a new head, and they give you their old shriveled one. And now you can go down and you can go through the catacombs. We had the game finished in a week. We played through these games all the time, start to finish, right? No walkthroughs. There was no walkthroughs. This was not really a thing. This was the time where you were calling phone numbers to get tips in games. Right? Return to Zork. Good Lord. Return to Zork was so much fun. Ridiculous old game. And there was maze, like a maze forest in there and various other bits and pieces. I'm actually not sure we finished Return to Zork, but anyways, we had like one of those big drafting paper pads, and we had maps drawn on it. We had all kinds of stuff. It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Good stuff. So anyways, that's a thing. Have I ever finished a Sierra game without a walkthrough? Yes. Quest for Glory 2, Quest for Glory 4, Space Quest 3, Space Quest 4, King's Quest 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yes, that sounds about right. Yeah, tons of them. And it was just, you had to. There was no alternative. There was no other way to go around it. Okay, what else do we have? Just checking to see if I missed any from my list. Discord, Orthonox, do you enjoy reading books? And if so, what books do you enjoy? I used to read a lot more than I do now. My type of book tends to be classic fantasy. So Lord of the Rings is kind of my go-to and has been my go-to for a long time. But I also got into a lot of the D&D books as well. Ed Greenwood, a lot of the Elminster Forgotten Realms stuff. Forgotten Realms? Yes, I'm sure it's Forgotten Realms. God, who else? R.A. Salvatore was really good. All of the stuff with the Drow and the Underdark and whatnot. But I was never that well read as far as novels go. I tended more towards the business shenanigans and all of that kind of stuff. So now I do lots of reading. It's just not books. Now it's license agreements and legal mumbo jumbo and things like that. Note, I am not a lawyer. I will never be a lawyer. But I did work as a person writing agreements for the RCMP for a long time. So I have a lot of experience in that area. I just don't have any credentials to back them up. Take that for what it's worth. But anyways, as far as books, yeah, I liked a lot of the D&D books. A lot, it's, swords and sorcery kind of thing, magic, all of that stuff was great. The only one that I never really got into that I wanted to was Ravenloft. I always liked that. It was a great setting. Okay. Let us go back and check with, I think I'm getting close to being done here. In chat, feel free to toss any other questions and I will gladly get to them. But I'm going to do my closing one, the one that I've been kind of waiting for here. Because I knew it would come up, and it came up several times. People asked, sort of a dual question here. But I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, so I need a drink. So the question is, where did the name Tarmack come from? That's the first one of two. And the answer is, I don't remember. The nickname Tarmack is something that I would have started using probably around I don't know, 2000, 2001, give or take. I was using it before I was at BioWare. I was using it as part of these Neverwinter Nights persistent worlds. Basically, small-scale MMOs, like MMOs where you could have 30 or 40 people online at any one time. It was just modding, the modding scene. It might have been earlier than that. I don't remember. And I have genuinely no idea. I think I liked the word. I liked the way that it sounded. And I knew that it was pavement at an airport. So let's add a K and pick my name. You know, it could have been something as simple as I tried Tarmack without the K, and then it came back that name was already registered. I have no idea. So, but either way, that's not a very exciting question nor answer. But the other one is, where does the love of gnomes come from? So this will be a little bit of a story. My brother, Tyler, he's the middle one. I'm the oldest. He was always a bit of a goofball, and he had sort of these faces or mannerisms that he would do. He had the crab, he had a June bug, this little, like, you know, maneuvering around and making squawking noise, just stupid, ridiculous nonsense. But what you would do is you would get up right behind somebody. And one of them was the gnome. And so you get up right behind somebody. They don't know you're there. You kind of hunch over and you puff your lip up a little bit, scrunch your face down, and you get right next to them. And they turn around and inevitably make a very loud noise out of fear. This would have been, God, I don't know. I would have been probably 15, 16 maybe. And it just became a little practical joke in the family. It was one of those silly little things, and I kind of played around with it a little bit, and it was good. And I don't remember why I decided it would be a good idea to break it out drunk at karaoke in my 20s, but I did, because it just popped into my head. I figured, this is great. I've got a friend right here, and I'm gonna hobble over and scare the ever living piss out of them. And it was great. It was fantastic. And what happened was it stuck. The people that were around started to ask me to do it again. They had a new person that was in the group. Go gnome them. Go gnome them. It stuck. And I started to get t-shirts. I started to get gnomes as gifts. I started to get all of these different sorts of things. It was just a ridiculous, stupid little face that we made as kids to scare people because they weren't expecting it. And that's it. That's where gnomes came from. It's I don't know if it's necessarily the most exciting story out there, but it is genuine. That's how it happened. And I got to a point where I was done. Like I didn't want any more gnomes. But the channel happened. I decided I was going to do video podcasting. That was my plan. So I named the channel the Gnomecast, even though I've been using the online Nick Tarmack forever. And then I only ever did one. We're going to do the next one on Saturday next week. So I hope that turns out okay. All right. What else have we got? What are your thoughts on the comments for your latest video? And this will be, you know what? This will be a good closer. Ryan, perhaps. I'm going to give you the last question, and then I'm going to get the hell out of here because my voice is starting to get raspy. What are your thoughts in the comments for your latest video that are on the corresponding r/games thread? So let me bring that back up here really quick because I need to I wonder if it'll actually let me or if it's removed itself. So somebody posted the video that I did on... Fuck, you know what? Let's back this up. Okay, so I decided 2 weeks ago, give or take, that I was going to do a video on video games and the cost of video games, how expensive they were, how they were commonly defended. And as I was going through and doing the research on this, I made a video about this argument that games are too expensive to make. And you'll see it on Reddit, you'll see it on forums, game forums, you'll see it on all kinds of different shenanigans. People will use it as a defense. They will say, stop complaining about loot boxes. We need to have the loot boxes because games are too expensive to make. We have microtransactions. Microtransactions are terrible. Yeah, but games are too expensive to make. They have to do this. They have to include these things because they're too expensive to make. This was a common argument. It happens all the time, all over the place, all the time. And it frustrated me. So I was going to do a video about it. So I did a whole bunch of research and I went through the financial records of Activision and Electronic Arts and Ubisoft. All of these companies post their records publicly. Like, this is not a hidden thing. I'm not making this stuff up. I just went and grabbed it from stock trader sites because that's how that works, right? Whenever, like, a public company has to say every year, here are our financial numbers. They have to publicly post it. That's part of the rules. That's how you get to be a public company, right? Shareholders have to be able to look at your numbers. So I grabbed all of their numbers. I also had, I had Tencent as well. But I think, and I left them out of the video because they are such an outlier on so many different things. They have the Chinese method of monetization and they're heavy into some mobile stuff, like really heavy. So none of their things even look close. So all I did was I took all of these numbers and I lined them up. I said, okay, from 2010 on to 2017, here's what's happening. You can see that the amount of money that they're spending on the cost of goods sold, which is the amount that can be directly related to a sale, right? The cost of producing a sale, right? Whether it's a box copy in a store, whether it's a referral amount or a royalty paid to Steam or any of those sorts of things. So I put that video out and I had somebody that posted it on a number of different places on Reddit, or a bunch of different people actually did. On our games, I got accused of a few things. I got accused of, and I don't have it here, and I need to find it because I think this is a reasonable discussion to have. Let's go with the top comment that got gilded. This one's tricky. So he lists off the balance sheet of 3 companies leveraging microtransactions, concludes that the companies remained profitable despite spending significant amounts on development of each game, and then uses that conclusion to insinuate that not only have the development costs not gone up, but also that the companies didn't need microtransactions to stay profitable in the first place. One of the conclusions that I had in my video was that microtransactions didn't become commonplace until after a period of time. 2013, 2014 is when this started to happen in earnest. And with the exception of Ubisoft, both Electronic Arts and Activision were very profitable before they went down the microtransaction road. Okay? Before Overwatch, before Hearthstone, before Battlefield, before all of these different things. They were profitable before. Ubisoft is a bit of a special case. They had a very bad year. So to be hit with an accusation that I used the same conclusion to both support and deny, I find to be very ridiculous. This is an individual that has effectively confused what I said in the video. The video was purely to talk about just one thing, one argument. Okay, it has nothing to do with whether games are getting more expensive. Of course they are. As time goes on and teams get bigger, of course it's going to be more expensive. I didn't say anything about that not happening. What I said was microtransactions didn't save the goddamn industry. That was the premise of the video, is that these companies were doing well. Okay, so since 2010, you can see the amount of money that they're spending producing the actual sales themselves. The cost of goods sold is going down. They're making fewer games. They're making more expensive, fewer games. Okay, but they started to do that after they were profitable. There was nothing necessary about microtransactions. That was the part that really threw me, to see people really confuse this. And I got hit with a number of accusations, or maybe not accusations, but people arguing that I used the same conclusion twice in both directions, saying that games are both getting more expensive and not getting more expensive. No, that's not what I said. Not what I said at all. Individually, games were getting more expensive. However, collectively, the publishers were spending less on games every year. If you make, let's say, 10 games, maybe I'm not going to throw math in because I need to be able to think through this. They started off making 20 games a year, right? And they were spending multiple millions of dollars, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars on making these things. They then reduced that down to like 6 or 7. Okay, well, you can be spending a ton more on those 6 or 7 games before you get anywhere near the threshold of the 25 that you'd been making before. That was the crux of it. That when I'm saying that games are more expensive and game developers are spending less on games, that's what that means. They're spending less overall, adding all of the games together that they make, because yes, individually they're more expensive, but they're making a lot fewer of them. That was kind of where that conclusion went. But that was the biggest thing. For the most part, other than that, people were a little bit grumpy that I didn't source the numbers. So I put my Excel sheet up on Google Docs, and people can go and look through it. It's the same bloody numbers that the companies all post. Like, this is not me claiming to have secret knowledge. This was just, I need to take the values that they put out. Let's throw them on a graph and see what it looks like. Okay, well, so it looks like, yeah, they're trending downwards on what they're spending every year. Their revenue's pretty much the same. Their developer R&D budgets are pretty much the same. Their marketing budget's pretty much the same. Okay, so they're just making fewer games that are more expensive, and their profits are climbing because they're spending less on games every year. That's how it works, right? But they were profitable before they started really leveraging the microtransactions. That was the key of the whole thing. Right? Microtransactions were never necessary to save the industry because games are getting too expensive to make. That line was always bullshit. It's always been incorrect. Of course, games are getting more expensive. Sure, why not? Right? You have Doom developed with a team of 10, 15 people, and now you've got a studio that's running with 50 people. Of course, that's more expensive. Sure. I didn't argue that. I wouldn't. It would be a silly argument to make. Oh, I think we're at the end. I think I'm done. I see just last little question, BlazeH99. I can't really comment on it because I know very little about it. It was a question about what do I think or feel about Don Bluth turning 1983's video game Dragon's Lair into an animated movie. I know nothing about it. I played Dragon's Lair. I feel like I played it. I know the animation style and whatnot. But I don't really know anything else about it. Oh, yes, Hypergrip's right. I also forgot to label the y-axis. So I need to, I need to have 30 lashes, I think, for that, even though when I put the first graph up, I did say in millions of dollars. Verbally is not good enough, I suppose. So that's my critique of the critique of me. I think that the vast majority of people that had an issue with the video were looking to have an issue with the video. They didn't like the title. They wanted to argue the title and not the content. And they wanted to pick apart little things that didn't matter. The y-axis thing, yeah, fine, whatever. I'm a speaker. I'm not an amazing video editor. I never have been, and I probably never will be. But that's just the way it goes. So let's close this up, at least so that I can make sure I know where to stop the video from the editing side. Thank you very much for watching. It's been an absolute blast. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, please feel free to follow me on Twitch. It is Tarmack Gaming on Twitch. YouTube channel is youtube.com/TheGnomecast, and I'm at Gnomecast on Twitter. I love doing this kind of stuff, and we'll see about doing another one next month. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. If people are going to have more questions, I would love to. It would be absolutely fantastic. So this has been a blast. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, good stuff.